Ain't nobody gonna care if she dies out there, spat the foreman, tossing the trembling black girl a frayed rope and pointing her toward the corral. Another day, another beating beneath the merciless Montana sun. But when a widowed cattleman rides through the dust and locks eyes with the girl everyone else calls worthless, a quiet, dangerous decision begins to form. Townsfolk call her the broken mule, certain she'll die nameless in the same dirt she's forced to kneel in. The rancher sees something different. Not a burden, but fierce strength beneath the bruises. Taking her away is more than mercy. It's a choice that could cost him his land, his son's love, and ignite hatred that will follow them across the prairie. Will she remain a scar from someone else's cruelty, or become the soul of a new family's hope? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The switch came down hard across Lila's shoulders. She didn't cry out. Crying only made it worse. Worthless, the foreman muttered, coiling the leather back into his fist. Even the mules work harder. The other ranch hands laughed. They always laughed. Lila kept her eyes on the dirt, her hands still gripping the fence post she'd been trying to secure. The wood was rotten. She'd told them yesterday. They blamed her anyway when it collapsed. Marcus Grayson stepped out of the ranch house, squinting against the Montana sun. His boots crunched across the dried earth. He stopped in front of Lila, close enough that she could smell whiskey on his breath. "This fence cost me 3 head of cattle," he said. His voice was quiet. Quieter was always worse. "That's coming out of your meals." She had barely eaten in 2 days. Now there would be nothing. "Yes, sir," she whispered. He walked away. The foreman shoved her toward the water trough. She stumbled, caught herself, and kept moving. Survival was measured in moments. Get through this hour, then the next. Don't think about tomorrow. Her shed was colder than the barn. The animals slept warmer than she did, but the shed had a door she could close, a place where no one watched her, where she could let her hands shake. She had been at Grayson Ranch for 2 years. Before that, another ranch. Before that, a work contract that turned into a trap. Her mother's voice echoed sometimes in the quiet. "Keep your head down. Stay silent. Survive." Lila's mother had escaped slavery, made it west, died when Lila was 12. Her father followed 2 years later, worked himself to death in a blacksmith's forge. All that strength, all that dignity, and still the world crushed them. She touched the small cloth bundle hidden beneath her straw mattress. Inside was a silver locket, her mother's, the only proof she'd ever been loved. Dawn came too early. It always did. The foreman's boot kicked the shed door open. "Water! Now!" Lila dragged herself upright. Her shoulders still burned from yesterday's beating. She hauled the buckets to the trough, her arms screaming. One of the ranch hands tripped her on the way back. The empty buckets clattered. More laughter. She fetched them again, said nothing. Mid-morning brought a visitor. Lila saw him from the corral where she was mending another broken fence. A man on horseback. Older. Weathered face. He rode with his back straight despite the dust and heat. She kept her head down. Visitors meant nothing to her. But then voices rose near the house. Marcus Grayson and the stranger. She couldn't hear the words, only the tone, negotiation, refusal. Then Grayson's sharp laugh. The foreman grabbed Lila by the arm. "Get over here." He dragged her toward the house. She stumbled, trying to keep pace. The stranger was still there, still on his horse. His eyes found hers. She looked away immediately. "This one's spoken for," Grayson was saying. "Got a debt she's working off." The stranger dismounted. "What kind of debt?" "Room and board. Supplies. Adds up quick." "How much?" Grayson named a number. $150. Lila's stomach dropped. She'd been here 2 years and the debt had only grown. It was impossible. Designed to be impossible. The stranger studied her. Not the way men usually looked at her. Not with cruelty or hunger. With something else. Something she didn't recognize. "I'll pay it," he said. Grayson's eyebrows lifted. "You serious?" $100. Plus I'll trade you that bay mare." Grayson considered. The math was working in his head. Cash in hand. Problem solved. Done. The foreman shoved Lila forward. Hear that? You just got bought. Her heart hammered. This was worse. This was another trap, another master. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. The stranger's voice was steady. Get your things. She had no things, just the clothes she wore and the cloth bundle hidden in the shed. She retrieved it with shaking hands, certain this was a trick. Certain she'd be dragged back before she reached the gate. But the stranger waited by his horse. He helped her onto the wagon without a word. His hands were careful, deliberate. She flinched anyway. As they pulled away, the foreman called out, She'll be dead or gone within a week. Waste of your money. The stranger didn't respond, just kept the horses moving. They rode in silence. Lila couldn't breathe right. Her chest was too tight. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that men didn't help. They took. They hurt. They lied. Finally, she forced the words out. What do you want from me? He glanced at her. Honest work for honest pay. Nothing more. Lies. It was always lies. But then he stopped the wagon, reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper. This is a letter of manumission, he said. Legal document. States you're a free woman, employed by me of your own will. She stared at the paper. The words blurred. She could barely read. He read it aloud, slowly, clearly. Monthly wages, $3 plus room and board, free to leave at any time. Her hands trembled as she took the document. The paper felt impossibly light, impossibly fragile. My wife made me promise, he continued. His voice was quiet, sad. If I ever had the chance to help someone find freedom, I'd take it. She believed in that. Fought for it her whole life. Lila's throat closed. She couldn't speak. The work will be hard, he admitted. My sons are grieving. The house is a mess. It won't be easy. But you'll be safe. You'll be free. Tears came before she could stop them. Real tears, not from pain, but from something she'd forgotten existed. She nodded. Once. That was all she could manage. He started the wagon again. They rode toward the horizon, toward something that might be hope, but his next words chilled her. I should warn you. Not everyone will accept this. The town might get difficult, but I'll protect you as best I can. Lila looked back at the ranch disappearing behind them, then forward at the unknown ahead. She was free. The paper said so. But freedom, she was learning, might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever been given. The Whitlock homestead appeared through the dust like something from a dream. 300 acres of wheat fields and pasture, a sturdy farmhouse with peeling paint, a barn that had seen better years. 3 boys waited on the porch. The smallest one bounced on his toes, maybe 8 years old. His eyes were wide with curiosity. The middle boy stood with arms crossed, 13 or so, watching, wary but not cruel. The oldest leaned against the railing, 17. His face was stone. His eyes were fire. Thomas Whitlock helped Lila down from the wagon. Boys, this is Miss Carter. She'll be helping us get the household running again. The youngest stepped forward. What's your name? Are you staying forever? Peter, Thomas said gently. Give her space. The middle boy nodded once. Acknowledgement without commitment. The oldest said nothing, just stared. Inside, the house told its story. Dust on every surface. Dishes piled in the wash basin. The hearth was cold despite the autumn chill. A woman's touch had been here once. Now it was gone. Thomas showed Lila to a small room off the kitchen. This was my wife's sewing room. It's yours now if you want it. The room was tiny but private. A narrow bed. A dresser. A window that looked toward the mountains. Luxury beyond anything Lila had known. But Margaret's things were everywhere. Needlework on the walls. A hairbrush on the dresser. Photographs in frames. Lila felt like an intruder. A replacement for something irreplaceable. Through the thin walls, voices rose. Mother's barely gone and you bring a stranger here? The oldest son, Samuel. Thomas's response was firm. Your mother would have done the same. This is what she believed in. She believed in family, not this. Samuel, enough. The argument faded into tense silence. Lila sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands still shook. The letter of manumission was folded in her pocket. Physical. Proof of freedom. But freedom felt terrifying. What if she failed? What if they sent her back? Sleep didn't come. She stared at the ceiling until dawn. Morning arrived cold and gray. Lila rose before the sun. Old habits. She moved through the house like a ghost, found the kitchen, started a fire in the hearth. There was cornmeal in the pantry, bacon in the cold box, coffee beans in a jar. She worked quickly, efficiently. Her mother had taught her that a woman who could make a home could survive anywhere. By the time the boys came downstairs, breakfast was ready. The table was set. The kitchen was clean. Peter's face lit up. It smells like when Mama cooked. Jonah, the middle boy, nodded approvingly. Samuel walked past the table without looking at the food. He poured himself coffee and left. Thomas thanked her quietly. Sincerely. Lila deflected. Gratitude still felt wrong. After breakfast, she cleaned, scrubbed floors, washed windows, organized shelves, found Margaret's recipe book tucked in a drawer. The pages were worn. Loved. She studied it carefully. By evening, she'd prepared a proper meal. Roast chicken, vegetables from the root cellar, fresh bread. The boys came to the table one by one. Peter ate like he'd been starving. This tastes like Mama's cooking. Even Jonah smiled slightly. Samuel didn't come at all. Thomas found him later in the barn. Lila heard them through the open door while she collected eggs. You will show her respect, Thomas said. She's not Mother. No one said she was. Then why is she here? Why now? Because we need help. Because it's the right thing to do. The right thing. Samuel's laugh was bitter. Mother's dead 6 months and you replace her. I'm not replacing anyone. I'm trying to keep this family together. Samuel stormed past Lila without acknowledgement. She kept her eyes down, stayed silent. That night, Thomas sat with her on the porch. The sun was setting over the wheat fields. The sky was bruised purple and gold. He's hurting, Thomas said. He doesn't mean it. I understand, Lila replied. And she did. She'd lost her mother too. Knew how grief turned into anger, how anger needed a target. Margaret believed people deserved dignity, Thomas continued. Believed everyone had worth. She fought for that her whole life. Fought for abolition when it wasn't popular, when it cost her friends. He pulled out a worn photograph. A woman with kind eyes and a strong jaw. Margaret. She made me promise. If I ever had the means to help someone find freedom, I'd do it. No hesitation. He looked at Lila. You're that promise kept. Lila's throat tightened. I don't know if I can do this. You already are. Days passed into a rhythm. Lila worked from dawn to dusk, cleaned, cooked, mended clothes, helped with outdoor chores, fed livestock, repaired fences. She proved herself through action. Peter followed her everywhere, asked endless questions, showed her his wooden toys. His loneliness was obvious, desperate. She answered patiently, let him help with simple tasks. Jonah warmed slowly, helped her carry water, thanked her for meals. His grief was quieter than Samuel's, but just as deep. Samuel remained hostile, made cutting remarks, refused food she prepared, undermined her work. But Thomas stood firm, defended her, insisted on respect. Then came the day they went to town. Thomas needed supplies, took Lila and Peter with him. The general store was crowded. Conversation stopped when they entered. Eyes followed Lila. Whispers started immediately. The shopkeeper was cold, didn't speak to her directly. Other customers moved away, created distance, made their disgust clear. Outside, children followed them, mimicked her walk, made animal sounds. Peter tried to defend her, but there were too many. A drunk man stumbled from the saloon, Grayson's friend. She recognized him. "That's Grayson's girl," he slurred. "Heard she's a thief." He spat at her feet. Thomas moved between them instantly. "You'll apologize. Now." The drunk backed away, muttered threats, disappeared into the crowd. The ride home was silent. Lila's humiliation was complete. She'd been free for less than 2 weeks, and already the walls were closing in. That night, she sat in her small room, held her mother's locket, wondered if freedom was worth this price. A soft knock. Thomas's voice. "May I come in?" She opened the door. He looked tired, older than his years. "I'm sorry for what happened today. It's not your fault. I knew it would be hard, but I didn't know how hard." Lila met his eyes. "Why are you really doing this? What do you want from me?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I want to be the man my wife believed I was. And I think you want to be the woman you were meant to be. Let's help each other get there." It wasn't an answer, but it was honest. And honesty, Lila was learning, was the rarest gift of all. Peter struggled with his reading lesson. The book sat open on the kitchen table. He squinted at the words like they were enemies. Lila watched from across the room. She was mending one of Jonah's shirts. The needle moved through the fabric in steady rhythm. "I can't do it," Peter said. His voice was small, defeated. Samuel looked up from sharpening a knife. "Mother used to help him, but she's gone now." The words hung heavy, an accusation and a grief all at once. Lila set down her sewing, crossed to the table. "May I try?" Peter nodded eagerly. Samuel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She sat beside the boy, pointed to the first word. "Sound it out, one letter at a time." Her mother had taught her to read in secret, late nights by candlelight, a skill passed down like a sacred trust. Her mother had learned from a plantation owner's daughter who believed education was a human right. That knowledge had traveled through chains and freedom alike. Now, Lila passed it forward. Peter worked through the sentence, stumbled, tried again. When he finished, his face glowed with pride. "I did it." Jonah stood in the doorway. He'd been watching. "That was good," he said quietly. Even Samuel's hostility seemed to crack, just slightly. The next day, Lila climbed into the attic to clean. Dust covered everything. Forgotten furniture, old tools, a trunk in the corner. She opened it carefully. Inside were Margaret's things, letters, diaries, pamphlets about abolition and women's rights, words about justice and dignity and the fight for freedom. One diary entry stopped her cold. "If we ever have the means, I pray Thomas will use it to help someone find freedom. That is the legacy I want for our sons, not land or money. The courage to do what's right when it costs everything." Lila's hands trembled. Thomas hadn't acted on impulse. He'd fulfilled a promise, honored his wife by living her values. Beneath Margaret's things, she found another bundle, her own mother's belongings. Thomas must have retrieved them from Grayson Ranch without telling her. A diary written in careful script, photographs of her father, the story of her mother's escape from Kentucky, her father's work as a blacksmith, their desperate love, their determination to build something better. Lila read until tears blurred the words. She came from strength, from people who refused to be broken. That blood ran in her veins. The sound of hooves interrupted her grief. She looked out the attic window. A man in a marshal's badge rode up to the house. Her stomach dropped. Downstairs voices rose. She crept to the top of the stairs. Marshal Edwin Goss stood in the doorway. Cold eyes, hard mouth. A warrant in his hand. "Marcus Grayson filed charges," he said. "Theft. Claims she stole a horse and supplies. $200 worth." Thomas's voice was steel. "That's a lie." "That's for a judge to decide. She needs to come with me. She's a free woman. I have documentation." "Show me." Thomas produced the letter of manumission, the payment receipts, proof that Grayson had been compensated. Goss barely looked at them. Judge will sort it out. Trial's set for next week. Keep her close. If she runs, it proves guilt. After he left, the family gathered. Thomas explained the situation. Grayson was retaliating, using the law as a weapon. "We'll fight this," Thomas said. "I'll hire a lawyer." Samuel spoke first. "What can we do to help?" It was the first time he'd offered anything, the first crack in his wall. "We testify," Jonah said. "Tell them who she really is." Peter grabbed Lila's hand. "Your family." The word hit her like a fist. Family. She'd been here barely a month. How could they call her family? But Thomas nodded. "They're right. You are family, and we protect family." Word of the trial spread through town like wildfire. Neighbors took sides. Some quietly supported Thomas. Others openly condemned him. Clara Reeve was the loudest, a widow who'd set her sights on Thomas long before Margaret died. She stood in the church social and declared Lila a threat to decent society. Anonymous threats followed. A note nailed to the barn door. Send her back or face consequences. A dead crow left on the porch. Omens of violence to come. Lila wanted to leave, told Thomas she'd go to spare them the trouble. He refused. "Running proves nothing. We stand our ground." The trial came fast. The courthouse packed with hostile faces. Judge Harlan presided, a friend of Grayson's. The verdict was decided before it began. Grayson testified first. Lies flowed smooth as honey. Claimed Lila stole his best horse. $50 in supplies. Painted himself as a victim of treachery. The jury nodded along. All white men. All predisposed to believe. Thomas's lawyer presented evidence. The manumission letter. Payment receipts. Proof of Grayson's fabricated debt. He argued this was retaliation, not justice. But Lila couldn't testify. The law forbade it. Her voice was silenced by the same system claiming to judge her. Then Samuel stood. The courtroom went quiet. Thomas looked surprised. Samuel had said nothing about this. "I need to speak," Samuel said. Judge Harlan frowned. "This is irregular. Please, it's important." The judge allowed it, barely. Samuel faced the jury. His voice shook but held. "Lila Carter saved my life." He described the day 3 days prior, working alone on a fence, a bull breaking loose, charging him with murder in its eyes. Samuel frozen with fear. Lila had appeared from nowhere, grabbed a pitchfork, shouted and waved until the bull turned toward her instead, led it away from Samuel into a pen, risked everything to save him. Samuel's leg had been injured, but he lived because of her. "She didn't have to do that," Samuel said. His voice broke. "I treated her terribly, said awful things, but she saved me anyway, because that's who she is." He looked directly at his father. "She's not a thief. She's a hero, and she's family." Jonah stood beside his brother. Then Peter. The 3 boys united. The courtroom murmured. Even hostile faces wavered. Judge Harlan couldn't ignore the testimony, couldn't dismiss the Whitlock family's unity. The manumission letter was legal. Grayson's charges were clearly false. He dismissed the case with a warning. "Any further complaints about this woman and we'll revisit this matter." It wasn't justice, just a reprieve. Outside, Grayson seethed. Clara Reeve watched from a distance, her face twisted with rage and jealousy. The ride home was quiet, exhausted but victorious. That night, Samuel found Lila in the barn. She was checking on the horses, making sure they were settled. "I'm sorry," he said. "No preamble, no excuses. For everything. You didn't deserve how I treated you." Lila turned, saw the boy behind the anger, the grief he carried like stones. "You were protecting your mother's memory," she said. "I understand." "She would have liked you," Samuel admitted. "Fought for people like you her whole life. I should have honored that. Instead, I dishonored her by being cruel. You're honoring her now." Samuel nodded, left before emotion overwhelmed him. Inside, the family celebrated quietly. First real moment of peace since Lila arrived. But outside in the darkness, Clara Reeve met with 2 ranch hands she'd bribed. Her plan was simple, brutal. If the law wouldn't remove Lila, she'd do it herself. The wheat silo would burn first, then everything else. Days after the trial, life settled into something almost normal. The boys accepted Lila completely. Samuel worked beside her without resentment. Jonah sought her advice. Peter shadowed her everywhere. Thomas and Lila fell into easy conversation. Evening talks on the porch, shared stories of loss and hope. Something deeper than friendship was growing. Neither acknowledged it yet. The community shifted slowly. Some townspeople nodded at church. Mr. Bowen invited them to a barn raising. Small gestures, fragile progress. Lila began to believe she might actually belong here. But Jonah noticed things. Clara Reeves' wagon near their property at odd hours. He mentioned it to Thomas. "She's persistent," Thomas said, "but harmless." Lila wasn't convinced. She'd seen Clara's face at the trial. Pure hatred dressed in propriety. Samuel found boot prints near the fence line, too large to be any of theirs. Fresh. Recent. The family went on alert, but saw no direct threat. Just unease creeping through the days. Late one night, Clara Reeve returned. 2 ranch hands followed. Men she'd paid with promises and cash. They carried kerosene and matches. The wheat silo stood tall against the stars. Months of work, future income, everything the Whitlocks needed to survive winter. Clara's hands shook as she poured the kerosene. Jealousy had eaten through her reason. If Thomas wouldn't accept her help willingly, she'd create circumstances where he'd have no choice. Destroy his livelihood. Drive out the woman who'd stolen her place. The match caught. Flames spread fast. Inside the house, Lila woke first. Years of sleeping light, always ready to run. She smelled smoke before she saw the glow. She threw open her door. Smoke was seeping under the boys' rooms. The silo was engulfed. Flames reaching toward the barn. "Fire!" Her voice cut through the night. "Everyone out!" Thomas bolted from his room, got the boys moving. Samuel grabbed Peter. Jonah helped his father. They stumbled outside in nightclothes and panic. Thomas counted heads. Then his face went white. The animals. The barn was filling with smoke. Horses screamed. Cattle panicked. They'd burn alive. Lila ran before anyone could stop her. "Lila, no!" Thomas shouted. She ignored him, crashed through the barn door into hell. Smoke choked the air. Heat pressed against her skin. Her eyes watered instantly. She couldn't see more than a few feet, but she could hear. The animals' terror guided her. Years ago at Grayson Ranch, a barn had caught fire. She'd watched her father fight it. A blacksmith understood fire, knew how it moved, how it breathed. He'd taught her to stay calm, think through the fear. She soaked a cloth in the water trough, wrapped it around her face, moved systematically through the stalls, released the horses first, slapped their flanks, drove them toward the door. They bolted into the night. The cattle were harder, bigger, more panicked. She used her voice, firm commands, the tone her mother had used, authority born of necessity. One by one she guided them out. A beam cracked overhead, fell across the main exit, blocked her path. Smoke filled her lungs. Her vision swam, but there was another way. The hayloft, a window that opened to the corral. She climbed through fire and falling ash, squeezed through the window, dropped 10 feet into dirt. Her hands were burned, arms blistered. But she was alive. Outside, Thomas had organized a bucket brigade. Samuel, Jonah, Peter, passing water from the well, fighting the flames that threatened to spread. Neighbors arrived, drawn by the glow. Mr. Bowen and his sons, other farmers. Some helped, others watched. Lila joined the line despite her injuries, passed buckets until her hands bled. The fire was contained before it reached the house, but the wheat silo was destroyed. Months of harvest, gone. In the chaos, Peter saw movement. Someone running toward the tree line. "Pa! Someone's running away!" Thomas and Samuel gave chase. caught the figure before she reached her horse. Clara Reeve. She fought like a cornered animal, screamed blame and accusations. She ruined everything. You were supposed to need me. Her confession spilled out. The fire, the sabotage, everything driven by jealousy and desperation. Marshal Goss arrived at dawn. Someone had ridden to fetch him. He arrested Clara without ceremony. She ranted all the way to his horse about righteousness and justice. The ranch hands she'd bribed had already fled. Goss would find them eventually. Or he wouldn't. Either way, Clara faced arson charges, attempted murder. The town doctor came with Goss, treated Lila's burns, wrapped her hands and arms in clean bandages. "You're lucky," he said. "Could have been much worse." Thomas knelt beside her. His face was ash-streaked, exhausted. "The animals? All safe, because of you." Lila looked at the destroyed silo. "Your harvest, your income, I'm sorry. You saved my sons. You saved our home. The wheat doesn't matter." But it did matter. They both knew it. $300 in lost revenue, maybe more. Winter was coming. Creditors would circle. The land itself might be at risk. That night, Lila sat alone in her room, stared at the manumission letter, the paper that had given her freedom. She could leave, remove herself from the equation. Maybe then the Whitlocks would find peace. She packed her small bundle, her mother's locket, the few clothes she owned, moved silently through the sleeping house, made it to the front gate before Thomas's voice stopped her. "What are you doing?" She turned. He stood on the porch, backlit by lamplight. "I'm the reason all this happened," she said. "The fire, the threats, the trial. It's all because of me. You'll be better off without me." Thomas crossed the distance in seconds. Don't you dare. Your sons need stability, not this, not constant danger." "My sons need you," Thomas said. His voice cracked. "When Margaret died, I thought I died with her. Went through motions, fed the boys, worked the land, but I wasn't living." He took a breath, steadied himself. "Then you came. You brought life back to this house, gave my sons hope, gave me a reason to wake up." His eyes were fierce, desperate. "If you leave, we'll survive, but we won't live. And I don't want to just survive anymore." Lila's vision blurred. "I've never had a home, never belonged anywhere. You belong here, with us." The words hung between them, a bridge across impossible distance. Lila made her choice, dropped her bundle. "I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." Thomas exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Then we face whatever comes, together." They walked back to the house side by side. The boys were waiting. Peter ran to Lila, threw his arms around her waist. "You weren't going to leave without saying goodbye, were you?" "I'm not going anywhere, little one." The family stood together in the pre-dawn light. The destroyed silo smoked in the distance. The future was uncertain, dangerous, but they would face it as one. Morning came with harsh reality. The family surveyed the damage in full daylight. The wheat silo was a blackened skeleton. Ash covered everything. The smell of smoke lingered. Thomas calculated losses in silence. $300 minimum, maybe $4. The wheat had been their primary income. Now they'd rely entirely on cattle sales. It might not be enough. Samuel helped his father measure what could be salvaged. Very little. They'd need to rebuild from nothing. "What do we do?" Samuel asked. Thomas looked at his eldest son, saw the man he was becoming. "We rebuild. Together." Mr. Bowen arrived mid-morning. His wagon was loaded with lumber. His sons followed with tools and supplies. "Heard you could use some help," Bowen said simply. Other farmers came throughout the day. Neighbors who'd watched the trial, seen Lila's courage, been moved by the family's unity. They brought what they could spare. Seed for spring planting, preserves, a few head of cattle, not charity. Community. "What Clara did," Bowen said to Thomas, "that's not who we are. It wasn't universal acceptance. Some townspeople still refused to acknowledge Lila, but enough had changed, enough to matter. Work began on a new silo, smaller than before but functional. The community pitched in. Even those who disapproved of Lila's presence couldn't ignore what she'd done. She'd saved the Whitlock boys, risked her life for children not her own. Actions spoke louder than prejudice. Sometimes. Lila worked despite her bandaged hands. Couldn't grip tools but could organize, direct, feed the workers, make herself useful. Thomas watched her move through the crowd, efficient, graceful, necessary. His feelings had grown beyond respect, beyond friendship, into something deeper, dangerous. He wasn't ready to name it, neither was she. Late afternoon brought an unwelcome visitor. Marcus Grayson rode up drunk and furious. His ranch had sold at auction, his reputation destroyed, everything lost. And he blamed Lila. Samuel saw him first. Pa, trouble. The family was inside. Grayson dismounted unsteadily, pulled a rifle from his saddle, waved a paper in his other hand. "She's mine," he shouted. "Got papers that prove it." Thomas stepped outside, unarmed, calm. "Leave, Grayson. You've done enough damage." "She's my property. Law says so." The paper was obviously forged, crude, desperate, but Grayson was beyond reason. Lila appeared in the doorway behind Thomas. Her heart hammered, but her voice was steady. "I'm nobody's property." Grayson's face twisted. "You ungrateful wretch. I gave you shelter, fed you. You beat me, starved me, told me I was worthless." She stepped forward, stood beside Thomas. "But you were wrong. I'm not worthless. I'm not broken. I survived you." Her voice grew stronger. "And I'm going to keep surviving, keep living, keep being free." Grayson raised the rifle. His hands shook. Whiskey and rage made him unpredictable. Samuel moved faster than thought, tackled Grayson from the side. They hit the ground hard. The rifle discharged into the air. Jonah was there instantly, kicked the weapon away, helped his brother pin Grayson down. Hoofbeats approached. Marshal Goss. He'd been monitoring Grayson since Clara's arrest. Knew the man was dangerous. Goss dismounted, assessed the situation. "Marcus Grayson, you're under arrest. Trespassing. Assault. Fraud." He held up the forged document. "This is pathetic, even for you." Grayson was dragged away, still shouting. Threats that meant nothing. Power he no longer possessed. Goss turned to Lila. "You're free and clear, Miss Carter, legally and every other way. No one can challenge that now." After he left, the family stood together in silence. The threat was finally over. Truly over. That night, Thomas made his plans clear. Lila was no longer an employee. He offered her equal partnership in the homestead, her name on the deed, legal co-ownership. "I can't accept that," Lila said. "Why not? It's too much. I haven't earned it." Thomas's expression was fierce. "You've earned it 10 times over. This land is as much yours as mine." Lila hesitated, then nodded. "One condition. I keep working, keep earning my place. I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's family." The word still made her chest tight. Family. Something she'd never thought she'd have again. Winter arrived with the first snow. The new silo stood complete. Smaller than before, but sturdy. The community's gift. Their acceptance made physical. Inside, the family gathered around the hearth. Lila read to Peter from Margaret's old book. Jonah helped her with a quilt she was making. Samuel and Thomas discussed spring planting. Her input was expected, valued. For the first time in years, Lila felt peace. Thomas asked her to walk with him. Evening air, snow falling soft and silent. They reached the river crossing, the place where everything changed, where he'd first given her the manumission letter. "I need to ask you something," Thomas said. His breath misted in the cold. "And I need you to answer honestly." Lila's pulse quickened. "What is it? Are you happy here? Truly?" She considered. Thought of everything she'd endured, everything she'd gained. "Happier than I've ever been." Thomas turned to face her fully. His expression was vulnerable, open. Then would you consider staying permanently? Not as an employee, not even as a partner. He took her hand carefully, mindful of her healing burns. As my wife. Lila's world tilted. Thomas, I love you, Lila. I think I have for a while now. I know the world will judge us. I know it won't be easy. But I don't care anymore. His voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes. I want to build a life with you. A real life. Will you marry me? Lila's first thought was the boys. Samuel, Jonah, Peter, what will they think? They already told me if I didn't ask, they'd be disappointed. The town, the community. Some will accept it, some won't. But those who matter already do. She looked into his eyes, saw everything he offered. Home, family, love. Things she'd stopped believing existed for someone like her. Are you sure? Her voice barely whispered. Really sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Lila felt tears come, not from pain, from joy, from hope, from the impossible made real. Yes, she said, 1,000 times yes. Thomas pulled her close, held her like she was precious, irreplaceable, because she was. They married 2 weeks later. Small ceremony. Justice of the peace. Mr. Bowen and his family as witnesses. The 3 boys standing proud beside them. Some townspeople boycotted. Others quietly congratulated. The church was divided. But the pastor allowed them to attend services. Progress measured in inches. Lila became Lila Whitlock. Her name on the property deed. Legal co-owner, equal partner, wife. The world didn't change overnight. Prejudice didn't disappear. But cracks appeared. Light got through. And in those cracks, a family grew stronger. Spring arrived with a violence of color. Green exploded across the fields. The new wheat crop pushed through dark soil. Life returning after winter's death. The Whitlock homestead transformed. Fresh paint on the house. Repaired fences. A garden that flourished under Lila's care. The land itself seemed to breathe easier. Thomas and Lila worked side by side, partners in every sense. Their love was quiet, steady, built on shared labor and mutual respect. The boys thrived. Samuel turned 18, announced plans to attend agricultural college in the fall. He wanted to learn modern farming techniques, bring knowledge back to the homestead. He brought home a girl he was courting, Emily, daughter of a neighboring farmer. Introduced Lila without hesitation. This is my stepmother. The word came natural, proud. Emily shook Lila's hand warmly. Some bridges were easier to cross than others. Jonah found his calling in carpentry, built improvements across the property, a new chicken coop, extended porch, shelves for Lila's preserves. His hands were skilled. His heart was steady. He called Lila Ma now, openly, without reservation. The name fit like it had always belonged. Peter excelled in school, top of his class in reading and arithmetic. He told everyone Lila was his mother. The memories of Margaret were fading, a bittersweet truth. But childhood moved forward, always forward. News came from town. Marcus Grayson sentenced to 5 years, multiple charges, his ranch sold to pay debts, the workers scattered. That chapter closed permanently. Clara Reeve received 3 years for arson. Word was she'd gone quiet in prison, broken by her own hatred. Lila felt unexpected pity. Clara had been trapped too, by different chains, but chains nonetheless. The community continued its slow shift. Mr. Bowen and his family became close friends. Regular Sunday dinners, children playing together, genuine friendship that crossed old boundaries. Other farmers consulted Lila on animal husbandry, household management. Her expertise earned through suffering now served a better purpose. She became known, respected, not universally, but enough. The general store served her without incident. The doctor tipped his hat, small gestures. But they accumulated, built something resembling acceptance. Summer brought a traveling photographer. Thomas suggested a family portrait, something permanent, proof they existed. mattered. They dressed in their Sunday best, gathered in front of the house, Thomas and Lila seated, the boys standing behind, formal, proper. But the photographer also captured a candid moment. The family on the porch, laughing at something Peter said, real, unguarded. That photograph became Lila's favorite. Thomas had it framed, placed it on the mantel beside Margaret's portrait. 2 women, 2 chapters, both honored. Lila asked if it was all right, having both photographs displayed. Thomas touched Margaret's frame gently. She would want it, would want us to keep living, keep loving. Lila opened the shadow box she'd made. Inside was her mother's silver locket, her father's photograph, the diary pages that told their story. She showed Peter, told him about his grandmother, the woman who'd escaped slavery, who'd taught Lila to read, to survive, to never stop fighting. "So we're all free because of her?" Peter asked. "That's right. Freedom is passed down, like love, like courage." Peter traced the locket's chain. "I'll remember her, I promise." Autumn came with harvest. The new wheat crop yielded well, not as much as before the fire, but enough. Combined with cattle sales, the homestead was stable, secure. Creditors were paid. The land was safe. The future looked possible. One evening, Thomas took Lila to the river crossing, the place where everything changed, where he'd given her the manumission letter 2 years ago. She stood where she'd first held that paper, trembling, disbelieving. Now she held something different, the family portrait, proof of everything they'd built. "I used to think freedom was just the absence of chains," she said quietly. Thomas stood beside her. "And now I know it's more. It's the presence of love, the choice to stay, the courage to build something worth fighting for." She looked at him, at the man who'd given her a chance when no one else would, who'd stood beside her through fire and threats and judgment. "This is my home," she said. "This is my family." Thomas pulled her close. They watched the sun set over the wheat fields, golden light painting everything it touched. In the distance, the boys were visible. Samuel teaching Jonah to throw a rope, Peter chasing the dog through the grass. Laughter carried on the wind. The homestead stood solid behind them. Smoke rose from the chimney. Curtains moved in the windows. Signs of life, warmth, belonging. Lila thought of her mother, her father, the sacrifices they'd made, the strength they'd passed down through blood and memory. She thought of Margaret, the woman whose belief in justice had set all of this in motion, whose legacy lived in her son's kindness. She thought of Thomas, who'd seen her worth when the world saw nothing. And she thought of herself, the girl who'd been beaten daily at a ranch, who'd been told she was worthless, broken, less than human. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman, free, loved, home. The scars remained. Some wounds never fully healed, but they no longer defined her. She was more than what had been done to her. She was Lila Whitlock, wife, mother, partner, survivor. The wheat swayed in the evening breeze. The land stretched toward mountains. The sky burned orange and purple and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Prejudice didn't die in a day. Progress was slow, fragile, hard-won. But tonight, there was peace. There was family. There was home. And that was everything. Thomas squeezed her hand. "Ready to head back?" Lila looked at the house one more time, at everything it represented, everything it promised. "Yes," she said. "Let's go home." They walked together through the wheat, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances, who'd chosen to build something beautiful from broken pieces. Behind them, the river flowed, constant, unchanging, witness to the moment that changed everything. Ahead, the boys waited. 3 sons who'd learned that family was more than blood. That love was stronger than hate. That courage meant standing for what was right even when the world made it hard. The homestead lights glowed warm against the darkening sky. Dinner would be ready soon. Stories would be shared. Plans would be made for tomorrow's work. It was ordinary, simple, perfect. Lila had spent years believing she'd never have this, never deserve it. But she'd been wrong. She deserved it, had earned it through survival, through refusing to let cruelty kill her spirit, through choosing hope when despair was easier. The door opened. Peter called out, his voice bright with impatience. Dinner was getting cold. Lila smiled, quickened her pace. Thomas matched her stride. They entered the house together. The door closed behind them, sealing them in warmth, in safety, in love. Outside, the stars emerged. The wheat whispered secrets to the wind. The land held its breath. And on the Whitlock homestead, a family sat down to dinner. Imperfect, hard-won, real. This was freedom. This was home. This was everything worth fighting for.